In mid-January of 1911, the criminal Saad Iskandar was born in one of the provinces of Upper Egypt into a family with a high financial status. He was the youngest among his siblings, having an older brother and two older sisters, which led him to grow up as a pampered one by his parents. Saad grew up as the indulged one among all his family members, earning the nickname of the pampered boy. He was described as handsome, with a slender physique and eloquent speech, and he was well regarded by those who interacted with him. During this time, Egypt was known for its cotton industry, with the majority of villages engaged in this field, and Saad's brother had a textile factory. In 1946, at the age of 35, Saad was offered a job by his brother to work with him in the factory he owned. Saad accepted the offer and became responsible for the sales department. During his work, he encountered a wealthy widow named Zbeda. She inherited a considerable amount of money from her affluent family and her deceased husband, which contributed to her significant wealth. This wealthy woman fell in love with Saad, showering him with lavish gifts. Consequently, he stopped working at his brother's factory, relying only on the easier source of income provided by this wealthy woman. After a year, Zbeda proposed marriage, but when Saad expressed his financial inadequacy, she disclosed the location of her wealth and jewelry in her house to him. Saad for the first time witnessed the vast quantity of diamonds and money, igniting dark thoughts in his mind about committing the first murder. Saad chose the day for his crime, which happened to be a day off for all the servants and guards working for Zbeda. On that day, Saad headed to her palace, and after making sure no one else was present, he attacked Zbeda and killed her with a heated knife. Following the act, he decided to escape to Alexandria. But a few hours before his departure, he approached his brother and offered to promote his manufactured goods in Alexandria. And when his brother asked about the sudden trip, Saad skillfully dodged his question with his eloquent tongue, avoiding any suspicions about the real reason behind his sudden moving to Alexandria. At that time, due to the lack of surveillance cameras, no charges were brought against Saad for his first crime. Consequently, he decided to continue his criminal activities. After Saad arrived in Alexandria in 1948, he decided to purchase a warehouse in one of Alexandria's neighborhoods to store goods for his brother. A year after his initial crime, Saad met a woman named Fatma Yusuf, exploited his charm and fitness, he won her love, and he promised her marriage, and began visiting her in her house periodically, as she lived alone without any family members around, because most of them were residing in Cairo at the time. When Fatma was asked by neighbors about the identity of the person frequenting her house, she replied that it was her brother, who goes by the name of Mr. Yusuf. At the end of the 9th month of the same year, Saad asked Fatma about her neighbors' identities, and she informed him that in the apartment above hers in the same building lives a woman named Bamba Hassan, who is 60 years old living alone. When he questioned further about Bamba, Fatma began to tell him that Bamba is a stingy lady, but she is a financially well-off woman, and her children rarely visit her. Here, Saad was outlining his plan to rob Bamba after gathering sufficient information about her. And then, Saad asked Fatma about the neighbors living in the apartment below hers. She replied that it was an apartment occupied by a woman named Atuta, married to a man who works at night and returns in the morning. After Saad collected all this information, one day instead of entering Fatma's apartment, he went up the stairs and headed directly to Bamba's apartment. When Bamba heard Saad knocking on her door, she assumed it was one of her children visiting, so she opened the door for him. Saad immediately attacked her, causing her to scream loudly before he violently struck her head, leading to her loss of consciousness. However, Atuta heard the screaming sound of Bamba, so she quickly headed to her apartment. As soon as she entered through the door, Saad in return shocked her with a blow in the head, rendering her unconscious. After that, Saad immediately fled. Upon the arrival of Atuta's husband at their home, he was puzzled to find the door open and his wife absent. Concerned, he headed to Bamba's apartment, a place his wife often went to because she was a friend to Bamba. Upon entering the apartment, he was shocked to find his wife and Bamba laying on the floor, submerged in their own blood. Doctors managed to save Atuta from death. Unlike Bamba, she died in the hospital. During the police interrogation, Atuta told them that the culprit was Fatma's brother, who lives on the floor above her apartment. Mr. Yusuf, Fatma's brother, was then arrested, and when confronted Atuta, she informed the police that he wasn't the perpetrator she saw that night. So police asked Fatma about the identity of the person who frequented her apartment, and she informed them that a person named Saad Iskandar used to bring her some fabric occasionally. She also told them that she felt he might be the one behind this crime. Saad was arrested, but with the help of one of the most skilled lawyers in the country, Saad managed to be released from custody without any consequences for his second crime. After Saad released from prison, he decided to expand his criminal activities by renting a warehouse in a new area within the same city of Alexandria. He started preparing it to receive his victims, following the approach of Raya and Sikina, in luring women, murdering them, and disposing their bodies by burying them in the floor of the rented new warehouse, after robbing them, of course. Indeed, one woman began to disappear every week, leaving all women in a state of fear and reluctance to leave their homes during that period. 3 years passed, and Saad continued his criminal activities without leaving any trace for police to apprehend him. However, in October 1951, Saad approached a fabric merchant, and then he lured him into the warehouse under the pretext of having merchandise to show him. After luring the merchant to the warehouse, Saad killed him and buried him after stealing everything he had. Following this incident, everyone, both men and women, became extremely fearful. However, not for long, because in November 1951, specifically on the 23rd, was a normal day for a person named Al-Wazir Fam. He worked in the fabric trade, using a small transport cart for moving and selling fabrics. By unfortunate coincidence on that day, he happened to pass by Saad's warehouse. Saad detained him under the pretext of buying all the fabrics he had inside his car. At that same time, El-Sayed had heard about the chains of disappearances of many people in this area, so he was anxious while inside the warehouse with Saad. They entered the warehouse and Saad closed the door, but not securely. When El-Sayed started taking the fabric out of his car, Saad drew out a rod and struck him on the head. As the blow wasn't strong enough to render the man unconscious, Al-Wazir Fam quickly ran toward the door, covered in his own blood, and he managed to escape from the warehouse while running. At that same time, there was a truck driver riding his semi-truck, passing through the same street as the warehouse where Saad was committing his crimes. Suddenly, he saw a man bleeding from his head, calling for help in the middle of the road, with another man chasing him and carrying a rod. Unfortunately, Saad managed to pursue, kill, and rob Al-Wazir Fam in the middle of the road, but the driver witnessed it and quickly headed to the police station to report what he had seen. Saad realized that the driver would inform the police, so he decided to flee to Asyut in Upper Egypt. When the police went to the crime scene, they found Al-Wazir Fam's body laying in the middle of the road. Following the blood traces on the ground led them to Saad's warehouse. At that time, they detected a strong and foul odor emanating from the warehouse. Upon entering, they discovered traces of dug holes in the ground. So the police officer ordered excavation upon learning that the warehouse were rented by an individual named Saad Iskandar. During the excavation, the officer also ordered ambushers and patrols to search for Saad at the gates of Alexandria Governorate and Asyut Governorate for his apprehension. And indeed, Saad Iskandar was captured while on his way to Asyut by an officer named Fakhri Abdel Malik. Multiple bodies were discovered and identified after being removed from the warehouse floor. However, there were also numerous remains that were only bones, making identification challenging. On 25 February 1953, Saad Iskandar was sentenced to death by hanging after being found guilty, murdering more than 19 individuals. His final request was to smoke a cigarette before the execution of the death sentence. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe.